The elevator doors opened to reveal a breathtaking scenery. As we stepped outside, we were hit by the fresh scent of cut grass, falling water, and the sorts. I looked around me in amazement and decided that the Shroud was officially the most beautiful building I ever visited. Fear walked beside me, though he didn't pay attention to the surroundings. All too soon, our group stopped in the main area of the garden-like place, and Agent Zero came.
All right, Group D, listen up. This will be your post for the duration of this mission. Things for you to know are the following. There are anti-aircraft weapons on each corner of this level, and several more are placed on other levels, as well as neighboring buildings. Next, you are not to leave your post unless instructed or once your shift is completed. Third, do not engage any enemy that has been dropped by parachute or any other means until reinforcements arrive. You'll have no idea how many friends the enemy brought, especially at night. Unless you want to meet your maker sooner than you should, you are to obey these orders, no exceptions. Any questions?
Given that the instructions were pretty straightforward, no one spoke.
All right then. At least your group have goddamn ears and know how to use them.
Agent Zero murmured to himself.
Get to your posts!
With that, the group dispersed and went to their respective areas. My area was towards the south, where the city center was visible. I sighed as I walked over to my post. It was going to be a long day. Several hours have passed since I started my shift, and nothing happened. The only interesting moment was when I overheard two agents mentioning that they couldn't contact HQ. Within that hour, the Seeker authority present with us appeared agitated. Agent Zero was moodier than when we first met him. He snapped at an experienced assassin who glared at him indignantly. It was obvious that something was happening, and it left me with a bad feeling. As I shifted my weight from one leg to another, I felt just about ready to rip my hair out from sheer boredom. I immediately straightened my posture when I saw the woman Fear fancied walk by my station. We made eye contact and studied each other casually. The redhead nodded in greeting before she walked past me. I continued to stare at her until her figure disappeared behind the corner. Grinning widely, I activated my earpiece and switched to Fear's private channel. Hey Fear, I just met your girlfriend.
I've been single since last spring,
Fear replied. I snickered. Not for long, I said. She's got it all. Nice body, very mysterious allure, and she has her eyes set on you. There was silence as I heard light breathing coming from Fear's end.
You're talking about the woman from the car, aren't you?
I nodded my head eagerly, despite Fear not being able to see it. The very one. Don't try and deny that you're not attracted to her.
Actually, I was about to say that women are manipulative minxes who will step all over you.
I smirked. Afraid that she's a dominatrix? Isn't that what you're into? Fear let out an impatient growl.
I like a good challenge, though now is hardly an appropriate time. We're in the middle of a war, in case you've forgotten.
My amusement was replaced with sobriety. I know, which is exactly why you should take this last chance you got to enjoy life as much as you can. And that includes finding comfort in the arms of a woman. I could practically hear Fear's eyebrow rise in question.
I assume that's what you did with Agent Moore?
A soft smile plastered itself on my face as I remembered our shared night. Yeah, I answered. It was incredible. My friend let out a short laugh.
So when is the wedding?
He teased. I snorted ungracefully and paced around my post. Don't change the subject, Fear. We're talking about your needs that only a woman can satisfy. That time Fear laughed in good humor.
I can't believe you're trying to set me up.
I grinned once more. That's what friends do. We look out for each other. I stopped pacing. So, will you consider my suggestion? I won't stop bugging you about it until you give in. Fear let out an exasperated sigh.
I'll think about it,
He said. I nodded in satisfaction. Good man. I'll let you go now. How about we storm the nearest bar and drink the night away? I asked.
Sounds good. Let me know when you've found the place.
Will do, I replied, and severed the connection. I sighed lightly and resumed my focus. My 12-hour-long shift finally came to an end as the next group of agents took over. Needing to unwind, I asked an information officer where the nearest bar was and left. It turned out that the bar, which I didn't even bother to try to pronounce, was just down the street from the Shroud. From what the officer told me, it was decent, and there was even a disco mixed in with it. I found myself at the bar around 8 p.m., drinking a very nice brandy while checking out the scene. Young people danced on the floor, while some of the older individuals sat in the booth, laughing away. Wanting a companion, I took out my phone and sent a message to Fear, inviting him to come over, before I placed it back in my pocket. As I had my hood down, I noticed that several women stared at me with lust, visible in their eyes. I wanted to shiver as I could only imagine what they were visualizing in their sick minds. One woman in a cocktail dress mustered enough courage to come and sit beside me. She smiled seductively as she crossed her legs to expose more skin.
Hello there.
She said in a low, accented voice.
You're a secret agent, aren't you?
Oh wow, I thought. How much brain power did it take for you to figure that out? As much as I wanted to speak my thoughts, I decided to play it cool. I am, I confirmed.
What brings a secret agent here?
She smiled. That is strictly confidential, I replied calmly.
Oh, I see.
She attempted to give me a sexy look as her light green eyes shined in the low light.
Well, I have a situation that could use your help.
She leaned forward, which gave me a better view of her cleavage.
It can only be fixed by the best.
By that point, I was really close to rolling my eyes. Sorry, ma'am, I'm off duty. The slut, woman, pouted.
Oh, come now, it won't take long.
She said as she rubbed her thigh against mine. I sighed. Look, I'm not interested. Even if I were, I don't have the money to pay for you. My comment caught the blonde woman's attention, for she leaned away and stared at me in shock.
I'm not a hooker.
She said rather loud, which caught the attention of people around us. Could have fooled me, I replied back. That seemed to have pissed her off, as she stood up abruptly and glared at me.
I am not a hooker.
She replied fiercely. It was then that a group of 5 hot-blooded young males came in and stood behind the woman.
What is going on?
The leader said with his thick accent.
This man just called me a hooker.
The woman replied. The leader of the group looked at me with a cocked eyebrow.
Is that true?
I stared back at him carelessly. Well, considering the way that she's dressed and how she was practically throwing herself at me, I don't see why any of you are surprised at her title. The woman's glare intensified, and she was about to slap me when the leader grabbed her hand and held her down.
Now, sweetie, let the man handle this.
He cooed at her. I wanted to throw up then and there. The blonde woman smiled at him seductively before she focused her death glare on me again. The leader of the group turned to face me as well.
Apologize now.
He simply said. I shook my head. Why should I, when it's true? I asked. The other 4 men cracked their knuckles in hopes of intimidating me. I inwardly rolled my eyes at their display of hormonal stupidity.
If you don't apologize, then we will beat you until you do.
I don't mind seeing some blood.
The woman commented as she smirked. I snorted. Well, if it means you're not pregnant, then I suppose it is a good thing for you, I retorted back. My remark caused her mouth to drop as she stared at me in disbelief before she looked away in frustration. I chuckled, but I was cut off by the group leader as he grabbed me by my collar. He snarled at my face.
You do not talk to a woman like that,
he shouted. I cocked an eyebrow arrogantly. You're women, huh? Are you all sex buddies or something? A vein visibly throbbed on the leader's bald head as his grip on me tightened.
That is it. We are going to teach you a lesson.
I sighed before I rolled backwards and used my weight to push the leader over me and into the area behind the bar. He crashed into numerous bottles and swore in whatever his language was as he staggered up while he tried to regain his balance. I slid over the counter and kicked him where it really hurt. I then rammed his head through the glass cover where the other bottles were. He cried out in pain before he slid down and curled into a fetal position on the floor. I straightened my back and saw the other men in a fighting position. Each of them had a knife out. I sighed again and pressed one hand against my forehead. Guys, do you really want to continue with this? All you'll get is pain. The men ignored me and continued to stay in their position. One threw himself at me. I stepped to the side and punched him hard on the nose, which caused him to pass out. I stared at the others. Alright guys, is this really what you want to mess with? I asked as I pulled back my cloaks to reveal several sharp combat knives. The remaining gang members froze and visibly gulped. One was actually smart enough to drop his knife and run. The other 2 glanced at each other, and then at me, before they too ran out of the bar. Satisfied, I relaxed my position. I then turned to face the blonde woman, who was looking at me with her mouth open and shock evident in her eyes. I slightly smirked. There's more where that came from, babe, I mocked. Without a word, the blonde woman took her coat from a nearby hanger and stomped out of the bar. I couldn't help but grin at the situation. As I looked around, I finally noticed the crowd of bystanders staring at me in shock. I stared back at them coolly, yet I felt slightly embarrassed by the attention. It's okay, I said after some silence. I'm a seeker agent. With that, the crowd murmured amongst themselves and nodded their heads in acceptance. They went back to their own business, and the earlier fight was forgotten. I sat back in my original seat and massaged my temple with one hand while I gestured the bartender to give me another drink with the other. The man gave it to me and smiled.
On the house,
he said before he turned his attention to other customers. I blinked as I didn't see how the fight was worthy enough, but I didn't press the matter. Instead, I drank generously and set the glass back down. I wasn't sure how much time had passed before I saw Fear walk in, without his mask, and stand in the middle of the dance floor awkwardly. Not wanting to leave him there like an idiot, I waved my half-empty glass to Fear an invitation. He saw my cue and made his way towards me. Unknown to him, Fear walked right by the female agent from earlier, who whipped her head around to look at him. I made eye contact with her and slightly smirked. In response, she stared at me blankly before she turned away. I looked up, and Fear had already sat down. He looked around with a raised eyebrow.
What the hell happened here?
He asked as he took in the sights of the bodies and of the broken glass. I shrugged. Just the usual. Gang of horny males trying to pick a fight.
Pho.
was the only response from Fear as he rolled his eyes at the implication. I drank a bit more from my glass and changed the subject. "So, what were you up to?" I asked.
You mean what I would have done if you hadn't invited me down here?
Fear raised an eyebrow.
I would have been cleaning my weapons. If I were really bored, I might have also sparred a bit.
The last part seemed to have gotten the woman's attention, for she turned around to look at us. To appear inconspicuous, she leaned on the wall and crossed her arms in a relaxed position. I did my best to hold back a chuckle at her obvious attempt of not appearing like she was eavesdropping. Alright then, I'd play her game. I leaned my weight against the bar and adjusted my position to something more casual. Spar, huh? You're restless, Fear? My friend shrugged, half-heartedly.
From time to time I am, though you're usually around for me to kick your ass.
He chuckled. Inwardly, I huffed in indignation, though on the outside, I retained my cool. Well, there are other ways of blowing off steam, you know, I said. Fear didn't catch the innuendo meaning behind my comment, and just continued on.
Of course there are, though sparring is one of the few things that I enjoy.
With that, he finally waved the bartender over and ordered a simple, cool beer. When his drink came, Fear took a rather large gulp of it and set it down on the table. It was just over a quarter full.
Crap,
He said abruptly.
I forgot how much I missed alcohol.
I stifled back laughter as I took in my friend's strange new behavior. Is alcohol the only thing that you miss? Nothing else? I asked slyly. As oblivious as ever, Fear went along with it.
I miss being a kid, where all I cared about was going home after school to play video games. Those were the best times of my life. I fucking hate this war. I hate being an assassin.
I stared at Fear in confusion, then at his drink as I wondered why he was opening up so much. Just what was in that drink? All of a sudden, Fear seemed to have sobered up, and stared at me as if he wondered the exact same thing that I did. I could only blink as I didn't know how to react. After a moment of just staring at each other, Fear finally looked away and stared at his drink. He pushed it back as far from him as he could, before he turned to face me again.
This is exactly why I stopped drinking long ago.
He said seriously. I couldn't help but lean my head back and laugh. When I calmed down, I was met by the sight of a confused and slightly annoyed assassin.
What's so funny?
He asked. I chuckled a bit before I answered. Don't you remember the good old days when we used to raid your cousin's liquor cabinet after Secret Basic and just drink the night away? Those days were a blast. Fear's expression softened lightly as he remembered the memories. For a brief moment, we both traveled back in time to a place before the severity of the phantom threat became out of control. I didn't bother hiding the smile that appeared on my face as I basked in the nostalgia that overwhelmed me. As usual, all good things have to come to an end, as I was pulled from my thoughts by the female agent leaning against the bar and ordering a drink. I smirked as an idea popped into my head. You know what you need, Fear? I asked. My friend raised an eyebrow.
That new Devil's Bow with heat detection features I saw on the secret market?
He answered. I shook my head and chuckled softly. I pushed back against the bar and stood up straight. No, I said. That time I allowed myself to grin widely. What you need is a date. With that, I walked past a confused Fear towards the female agent. I coughed to get her attention. Excuse me, I couldn't help but notice you checking out my friend. How about I introduce you to him? The red-haired woman merely blinked as I turned to face Fear. Said person visibly tensed, something that he normally never did once he saw her. I grabbed him firmly by the back of his light armor and guided him to the woman. The few meters there seemed to have been longer as Fear did his best to resist my pull without making it obvious. Fortunately for me, I was stronger and I literally shoved him pretty close to the woman's face. This here is my friend, Agent Fear. He would like to buy you a drink. wouldn't he? I gave Fear a face that relayed the message. Disagree with me, and you'll be breathing through a new hole somewhere. Luckily, Fear was smart enough to keep his mouth shut, and merely nodded hesitantly. I smiled at the female agent. So, what would you like to drink? The woman blinked in confusion.
I'll just have an apple martini. I'm not much of a heavy drinker.
She answered in her smooth voice. I purposely widened my eyes in excitement. Really? Oh, wow. Fear is not much of a heavy drinker, too. You guys have only just met, and already you have one thing in common. I pressed an uncomfortable Fear beside the female agent. Who knows? Maybe you two are more alike than you think. Right on time, the bartender set the female agent's drink in front of her. Said person took the drink, and slowly downed it all before she set the empty glass on the counter. I leaned against the bar on Fear's other side and nudged him. He looked at me with a glare, though his cheeks were red. Inwardly, I smirked as I enjoyed tormenting him. Tell her that she looks nice, I whispered. My friend stared at me in shock, but quickly looked away and grumbled in his breath.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The female agent asked. Fear grunted.
I said you look like a nice person.
He repeated.
Oh, thank you. I think.
The woman replied. Ask her what her name is, I whispered again. Fear cleared his throat quietly.
What's your name?
He asked. The woman turned to face him. Her hazel eyes studied him intensely.
I'm Agent Claire, combat specialist. Though I do participate in recon missions from time to time.
A combat specialist, huh? Maybe you two could spar sometime, I suggested. Agent Claire shrugged.
Sure, if Agent Fear is up to it.
She replied smoothly. I grinned. Oh, Fear is up to it all night. He enjoys sparring in his free time.
Really?
Claire asked, faking surprise.
Maybe we can spar when we're both free.
I'm sure you can, I said. Fear's been itching to put his far outreach to the test, though he's never found a sparring partner with enough flexibility. I put in all my effort to stifle my laughter.
Oh? I'm pretty flexible.
Agent Claire replied. I had to turn away to stifle the laughter that threatened to burst from my soul. Fear turned to face me and glared as he knew what I meant by my statement. I gave him an innocent look and focused my attention on the woman. I couldn't help but notice your accent. Where are you from? I asked curiously. Agent Claire replied,
I'm from Ireland. I joined the Seekers because of my uncle. He's actually on this mission with us.
A light bulb went off in my head. Your uncle doesn't happen to be Agent Kean, is he? The woman smiled.
That's him all right. Old son of a bitch won't quit for all he's worth. I worry that his conspiracy talk will get him in trouble with the Seeker higher power, though.
She sighed. I smiled in reassurance. Your uncle's a very capable man. I'm sure that even he's smart enough not to piss off the directors. Agent Claire shrugged.
I guess we'll see.
I nodded and stood up. Well, Agent Claire, it has been a pleasure meeting you, but I'm afraid I must retire to my quarters. I'm pretty exhausted. Have fun, you two. I winked at them, which caused a mixture of reactions from both of them. Agent Claire blinked at me repeatedly, while Fear looked like he was about to murder me. I blew him a mock kiss, and quickly went out the door before he could follow me. The outside air was a lot cooler than the bar, and I shivered despite the layers of cloak I had on me. I brought them closer to me, and walked back to the shroud. Even at night, the view was just as spectacular with all the lights it had on. With the amount of alcohol in my system, and no work to keep me focused, my thoughts automatically trailed to Rachel. My heart curled as the result. I sighed as I stopped, and looked up at the sky. There were no clouds, so I had a great view of the beautiful stars. My eyes softened as I imagined finishing the mission and seeing Rachel again. Soon, Rachel, I said softly. Soon.